righty then, here we go. I'm going to be talking about Rippazine number 2 today, and the reason that I decided to do this as a live stream instead of as a regular video is because there's just not that much to go over with Rippazine number 2. I didn't really want to waste a video on it. So the first thing I want to note is this is not the same shiny material as Rippazine number 1 was. Let's go back to Rippazine number 1 for a second. So here you had the collector's edition of Salvage, and this one has kind of a chromium cover look to it. I don't know if that's chromium exactly, but kind of close enough for government work, and it's all shiny and stuff. This one's not exactly the same as that. This one's actually has more of a die cut feel. You can actually feel texture to it as far as the main character goes, and as far as the gunshots and all this kind of stuff. Excuse me while I try not to feel up the main character on the cover here. But other than that, it's just kind of a standard thing. The one thing that really threw me for a loop is I couldn't get it out of the package. It came in one of these plastic bags and boards, and I had to peel it out of there because this portion of it, the port that sticks out, actually it actually stuck to the plastic. And so I was trying to figure out what the hell is sticking here, and I didn't think it would be the die cut portion on the front. But it actually was. I tried to figure out what it was on the back or whatnot. And finally, I just ripped the whole thing apart. Super Tizo writes, the cover quality and page paper is better on number 2. I don't get why Eric invested money into it, but he did. That's not a bad point. That's honestly, this should be a really low dollar point of entry. Now maybe he only did it on the collector's edition that he has the really good paper quality. I'm hoping that on the $7 stuff, the $7 version or $8 version, whichever it was, that one is the lower quality, because really what you want, and I actually thought of this while Ethan Van Sciver was talking about the idea of putting Rippaverse comics out in Walmart or some of the other ones. Super Tizo says the normal one is what he's talking about. Well, yeah, I don't know why he would invest good money in that. One of the things that Ethan Van Sciver was talking about was putting Rippaverse comics, or what would it take? What kind of price point would it take to put Rippaverse comics in a Walmart, in a Target, someplace where there was a newsstand or something? And I thought to myself, that's not really the place for those comics, but I would think that if you wanted to get word out to just, the kids on the street or something, you could put the Rippazine in a Walmart, in a Target or something like that, and give, if you put enough ads showing that, here are the comics that are available from Rippaverse, maybe that'd be something to do. I don't know how that'd work, really. Super Tizo said, I never opened my collector's edition number 2, but the normal $7 version is insanely high quality. Yeah. So I don't know why he's putting money into it like that. That doesn't make sense to me either. You would think that the $7 issue would just be, could be newsprint or whatever it is. But just going into the Rippazine, you've got a letter from the editor starting it off. I read that. It was just kind of the same usual BS. You got the actual cover without any of the Rippaverse writing on it and all that kind of stuff in there. It's a nice cover. Nothing wrong with the cover. Got Rippaverse. You got the title credits and whatnot, and then of course you've got the just freaking useless table of contents. I do not understand why the hell they find the need to put the table of contents in this jacked up order. They're like, what do you think you're gaining by that? Just basically say Artist Corner, page 4, Saoirse, page 8, Bird's Eye View, page 25. And by the way, maybe don't put the cartoon page directly after the comic page, because how do you know where the transition is? I mean, yeah, the art style and whatnot, but it's like it's jarring. It's kind of like going into one of those Marvel Comics comic sequences followed by the Hostess ad, and you don't see where the difference is in between the Hostess ad and then all of a sudden, he's got a fruit pie in his mouth. There's just not a whole lot to be offered here. I mean, Kane White kind of shows you how to draw arms. So if you want to draw arms, then yeah, this is great in terms of trying to teach people how to do artwork and stuff. But I'm not sure I would throw this as the first particular item in the book. You kind of want the first item to be something that's going to catch the reader's eye, and art lessons isn't exactly going to be that. Then you have the Saiorse story. I'll get back to that in a minute. And then after the Saiorse story, you have the cartoon. The cartoon is actually a little bit on the funny side. It kind of does a retcon on Alpha Core #1, where there's an except who plays a minor part in the story, who winds up being critical to how the book ends, and instead they attribute the ending to the pigeons. It's kind of funny. Then you have an article with Nerdrotic, and if you know who Nerdrotic is, I'm sure you're going to want to read that. Otherwise, if you're like me and I have no idea who that is, you don't care. So then you go into Lillian's Hot Tea, and there's one particular thing about Lillian's Hot Tea that I think is wanting, and it's the fact that it doesn't give any explicit links to the comics that it is pulling this information from. For example, when it says something to the effect of, it seems that Alpha Core has a new member straight out of prison. What kind of law enforcement agency hires criminals? It makes you wonder where Solari, Braxwell, and Valdez were recruited from, doesn't it? Okay, that's from Yaira #1. And so why don't you put a little parentheses there that says Yaira #1? And then that gives the reader a reason to go back and buy that particular comic. If you don't put that in there, the reader's not just going to buy every freaking thing in sight, trying to figure out, okay, well, where did that little piece of information come from? Especially from the fact that you just gave me the piece of information. Why the hell do I even need to read the actual comic in the first place? So you may as well go ahead and just put explicit references to the comics that you're referencing, and that way the readers will be pointed exactly in that direction. Then you've got Copper's Club, Gentleman Tips. I could give a crap about this section. Why the hell is it even in there? That's so ridiculous. And the same thing for this Harriet's Kitchen Macaroni and Cheese. At least this might have a little bit of utility as opposed to the Gentleman's Club thing. I'm like, give me a break. But even then, even this is like as bad as the horoscope thing was in the first issue. So now we've got a character spotlight on Goodyng, and he's working on a Goodyng Services robot that we've never seen before. And it just basically goes into details that were revealed in the Goodyng comic book, but it doesn't give you any real new information other than to say that, I mean, assuming this is all up to date, he's still married to his wife, so she didn't bite it or anything in between Goodyng the Polymath and ISOM #2. So beats me. There's a 2-page little thing about Bloodruth, where it just gives the I guess this is the Kane White cover, and then gives a little synopsis description, but it doesn't give a preview, which is kind of funny because there actually is a preview out there of Bloodruth. Michael Montanod had a couple of pencil pages in there where, unless they went back and retooled those, same as they did with Deborah Caritas' preview pages for Yaira #1, maybe now, and this is supposed to come out later in 2024. I'm saying it's going to probably align with Halloween. Then we go right into the previews. We've got the Goodyng the Polymath preview, and there's only 2 previews in this book. You've got Goodyng the Polymath, and then you've got Horseman. And the Goodyng, it's like, why didn't you save the ISOM #2 preview for this book, so that it could have been fleshed out a little more? I don't understand why they did that, because it was kind of jarring seeing ISOM #1 and ISOM #2 previewed in the same issue of Rippazine. That happened in Rippazine #1. So you get just the family dinner pictures from and some of the high school stuff, yada yada yada. And then for Horseman, I went ahead and I read the preview for Horseman. Usually I try and stay away from the previews, but in this case, let me catch up on here a little. I want Super Teaser says I want all his books to be like that going forward. What, newsprint or high quality? Which one? Super Teaser says Saoirse is the only aspect of the zine that he likes because she's doing document stuff, meaning what? Revealing stuff about the Rippaverse that we previously didn't know. Not much. She also shouldn't know any of this stuff. It's a weird article for what a reporter is making an article about him giving the reader in-universe fourth wall break info. Oh, okay, that must be the Goodyng the Goodyng article. Big Robot News today. I don't think Eric July is a true comic book fan, or he'd do a better job. Well, this is the Rippazine. I mean, the Rippazine is not a comic so much, except for the one comic story that's in it. So, Super Tizo said they said Bloodruth is before Halloween, the Saskas, but I doubt it. Yeah, it'll be Halloween. I wouldn't worry about that, and I wouldn't rake them over the coals if it's Halloween. High quality. Okay, so you want all the books to be high quality going forward. Hell, I at this point I could care less. Are you sure Saoirse? Galaxy Stranger says, "Are you sure that Saoirse doesn't mean desperation?" That would fit. Yeah, I can't get over how bland the Saoirse story is. So I'm reading the Horseman, Welcome to Florespark, the preview that is in Rippazine number 2. And, you know, I like the artwork. The artwork is nice. It's also a 5-page fight sequence with, you know, a lot of athleticism, a lot of ninjas, a lot of stuff going on as he's fighting on a train, but not a lot of, I don't know, not a lot of world building in this. I mean, it's one of these things where you just kind of jump right into the middle of the action, and there's nothing sustaining it other than, you know, the fight choreography, which is good. It's just I'm bored. You know, I get bored just by fighting. Yeah, if nobody's saying anything of note, and none of these ninjas are saying anything of note, the whole thing is narrated by the Horseman, and the Horseman is saying, you know, well, let's see, what does he say? Yeah, here's the kind of standard Punisher type dialogue you can find in this book. Whoever it was paid a lot of money for professionals, or maybe it's a family thing. Not sure which is worse. Either way, they're not playing around. Neither am I. Okay, fine. You know, measure your dicks or whatever. I wonder how that's going to affect the monetization of this live stream, but still, it's a prick measuring contest. But I mean, that's all these fights wind up being. I mean, and then there's a mention of Rippasend and Achromatic Chronicles Green and the first Rippaverse statue. There's an ad for that. It's just pretty freaking boring. Let's see. Big Robot News today. Sorry I came into the chat late. I meant in general. Like, whatever. Super Tizo, at least HORSEMAN Preview had Batman and the Punisher in it. Where was I didn't even think to look at the fact that one of the ninjas is kind of made up to be a bat. And honestly, I like here's the outfit that the Punisher I just said that Horseman has at the beginning. I like this outfit. I like that outfit a lot more than I like the one that's advertised on the covers of the Horseman books. This is a character that I think it would be really easy to get behind, but the other stylizing and the blue-yellow motif and whatnot. I mean, you've got some blue-yellow motif going on in here, but really it's so subdued that I kind of wish they'd stuck with that costume instead of going for something that was more super heroic-y. Super Tizo says the Court of Owls is now the Court of Bad Animals. Super Tizo, my bat. It was autographed. Oh, Batman. Oh, Batman. Oh, God. He's talking about the fact that he's using a bat. Okay, yeah. Oh, the puns are flying today. My bat. That bat was autographed. Who was it autographed by? Does it say? And why would he be using an autographed bat? Why would he be using any kind of real baseball bat? Oh, come on. I mean, that's supposed to be like some sort of, it ought to be some sort of other material that's actually used for clubbing people, not playing baseball. The purple horseman suit from cover B will probably be his ultimate final look. Oh, God. Loyal says, hi, Chad. Hi, Mike. Hope all is well. Yep, everything's fine over here. William Nee says, afternoon, people. All right. So we get into the Saoirse stuff. And the first thing that you see, I hate to say it, but there's a little bit of repetition going on here. Go figure. I mean, Eric July is writing it. So what happens? How were we introduced to Avery Silman in ISOM number 1? He was punching the heavy bag. He was punching the heavy bag, and now what do we see from Saoirse? She's punching the heavy bag, or kicking the heavy bag in this case. Yeah, so she's working out, and we get to see her in a full layout, kind of like we got to see him when he was walking out of the security thing. And most of this dialogue is kind of lifted straight from the video, or the other way around. The video introduction of Saoirse probably lifts a lot of this dialogue straight from. And that's almost a reason not to do those kinds of video introductions, because why on earth would you want to tell the reader practically everything you're going to say in the book right up front? So she's working for some guy, and they're kind of vague, talking about why it is that he cares about this job. She's, of course, in it for the money. She mentions Darren Fontano, says that, you couldn't handle Darren Fontano, blah, blah, blah. That'd be the end of the contract. So apparently she's scared of Darren Fontano. I don't know why. I don't see much of any reason to be scared of Darren Fontano for. Not when if you read ISOM number 1 or number 2. Talks about how an LF certified PI is not a hitman. I'm going to go into some detail on how LF certification is still some of the biggest BS that Eric July has ever invented. She just basically says she's going to get a motive for, I guess, why his this crime boss's competitor is impinging on his turf. And so then there's a sequence that has a nice little twist at the end, but big whoop. It's more kind of like, wow, did you actually have to go to those lengths? So she's mingling at a crowd. I swear I've seen this in Scarlet from G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe Scarlet has a thing just like this. That and the Saska sisters' Black Widow No Restraints play, which I don't really think was written by them. They also have Black Widow like mingling in a crowd full of criminals as she tries to get more information. So this is all just kind of standard fare, spy fare. And then she meets some guy who invites her to, I don't know, you go use the bathroom upstairs, except she uses a waitress's key card in order to get into some other place and can't find any information, but she's discovered, and then she reveals herself to be Saoirse, a LF certified private investigator. Why would you do that right up front? I'm not exactly sure why you'd even reveal that about yourself. And so she just starts asking questions, blah, blah, blah. And so he thinks he's going to take care of her. She makes short work out of him. And then, and now, oh, look, here's a woman in a suit, because you got to have some kind of girl boss character, I guess. And I don't know. Then she draws her gun. And when she draws her gun, she's like calling it, the great equalizer. And I just made me realize for a second, we have no idea what the standard gun laws of Florispark are. Now, Florispark has been called a city-state, so maybe it has its own gun laws. Either that, or it's going to be subject to whatever Texas's gun laws are. What are those gun laws anyway? I mean, I don't know whether Texans in the in the Rippaverse are allowed to keep and bear arms. Don't you think that's kind of important to communicate if you're going to be giving us this whole lethal force certification business? I mean, I'm not exactly sure how we're supposed to gauge the difference here. You know, what are basic gun rights, and then tell me what are lethal force certification gun rights. That's the thing that I don't understand at this point is why should anybody care whether you have lethal force certification? And what does lethal force certification even mean? I mean, I know he tried to explain it saying, you know, well, it's not James Bond type stuff. It's not a license to kill, even though when he explains it, it's like exactly a license to kill in the line of duty, which is, you know, you don't get to just kill for any reason. You don't get to be a hitman. But the way that it's worded, it seems to be that if for some reason you need to kill somebody in order to get the information you want, like a spy would, then how is that any different from what James Bond does? I mean, he can go and kill somebody to get the person's car and then use that car to do something, you know, to infiltrate a parking garage or something. That's allowed so long as it's in the line of duty. I don't see the difference. So, yeah, this whole lethal force certification thing, it's almost like he would have been better off writing these characters as government spies, because then we'd actually, you know, have an idea of what the government is like in FloorSpark, which is kind of a big gaping hole in the world building of the universe of the Rippaverse, that we don't know how the Rippaverse is governed different from us. You know, what is the layout of the United States different from the regular United States? What nations exist? What governments exist? What policies exist? How do they differ in their policies? You know, is California actually doing well for itself or not? How's Texas doing for itself compared to the other nations? Oh, Big Robot News today says, when Eric July goes out of business, all his books will be at the dollar store. We'll see. Mudbutt, knock off Casey Jones from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as far as the Horseman goes. I mean, he's a little bit bigger build. I mean, Casey Jones doesn't have near as much, personal armor either. Super Tizo says Dollar Tree already has a high quality dollar book. It's called Final Faction. I don't know what that's a reference to. William Nee says to Mudbud, feels kind of more like a great value Black Widow to me. Yeah. Let's see. Galaxy Stranger says Final Faction rules. And Andrew Rowland says, I'm getting very close to finishing King of Justice #2. Can't wait to get it done and send it over to you for review. Yes, feel free. Big Robot News today. There is a funny community college episode about G.I. Joe. Big Robot News today also says Eric July does not believe in gun laws. True, but that doesn't necessarily mean that FloorSpark doesn't believe in gun laws. I mean, that's one of the things that you cannot automatically assume that Eric July's own political views are going to be self-inserted into his idea of what FloorSpark society is. Because as an anarcho-capitalist, you wouldn't have a police office. I mean, you wouldn't have a state-run police kind of thing. You would just have private organizations. You would have dispute resolution organizations. You would not have taxes supporting a police office or whatnot. And that's why I'm saying, I mean, I have no idea how the governments of these particular new blocks of the United States are run such that we could have any idea why one would be in conflict with another. I mean, there's been plenty of opportunities for world building, but they're just not taking advantage of any. And I think it's because they don't want to get themselves locked into anything. But the longer you leave this stuff amorphous and, all over the map, the longer, the more reason your reader has reason to lose interest. Because if you, how do I put it? It's kind of like this Saoirse story. All through this Saoirse story, I was trying to figure out, why should I like this character? You know, if you want me to keep reading about this character, I have to like this character. I mean, she ends the issue drawing a gun on her assailants, and I left the issue feeling like, I don't care whether she lives or dies. You know, I don't care whether her mission is accomplished. I don't care anything about this character. And I want to know, why should I? You know, even with Salvage, there was this kind of sense like, you know, all right, I'm kind of curious about some of Salvage's stuff because I know he's got super hearing, so that's a little bit interesting about him. Is that an accept power? Is that something that he gets from gadgetry? What does all that constitute? So with him, and also there was the fact that you had people trying to kill him in the parking garage, sure, but you have the ninja from the first part of the story, the guy who had like super-powered legs, and he meets up with Salvage at the end of that story. And so you kind of want to see, okay, so how is this all going to merge together and become a coherent story? Here, it's just like, okay, so she walks around looking pretty, talks to a few people, and then, you know, people realize who she is, so they try and kick her ass, and instead she draws a gun, and then we're done. And we get introduced to a new mob boss who, you know, why wouldn't you just reuse Darren Fontano as opposed to introducing new mob boss? I don't even understand why that was done. So it's all kind of a, and now we're going to get the introduction of another mob boss with the boss Tuna guy from Horseman. So you got mob bosses all over the place. You know, one of the things that I started to realize when I was reading early Marvel Universe comics is that there was a whole lot of cross-seeding the villains so that you weren't having to create a new villain every single time. Stan Lee was very conservative about, you know, some of the number of villains he created, although in Spider-Man, you know, the one-on-one stuff, I mean, he would just pick an animal, create one off of that, pick a material, create one off of that. You know, he had Sandman, he had Vulture, he had Chameleon, he had Kraven the Hunter, he had he really went through a whole bunch of different ideas for villains. But then those villains got seeded out to different comics, even into comics where it didn't seem to fit really well. Like you had Doctor Doom showing up in Avengers, so that kind of made a little bit of sense. Although the motive didn't make much sense. You know, the Doctor Doom shows up in Avengers because, you know, I want to strike fear in the heart of the Fantastic Four by taking down a different super team than them. Like, okay. But then you also had Doctor Doom crossing over into Spider-Man. Like, what? Why? I actually have to go back and read why. That was on Spider-Man number 5. Oh, let's see what else we got here. Yeah, Super Tizo says, we don't even know what 7 countries make up the USA now. How is Horseman moving from Chicago's country to Texas country? Yeah, what are they, like the European Union at least, where they can go back and forth, or are we going to see something about how immigration is done from Chicago's area into Texas? Big Robot News today. I don't think even Eric July knows how the government is run in the real world or in the Flora Spark. No, I mean in Flora Spark, yeah, I don't think he went and created much of a Bible on this. Galaxy Stranger says the world may never know. Super Tizo says shame to stand and make Rippaman. Well, why? Goodness me. So as far as this whole Saoirse thing goes, I mean, what's Rippaverse going to have? That's my main question. My main takeaway from Rippaverse number 2 is I'm curious to see what's going to be in Rippaverse number 3. Are we going to have alternating stories, for example, between Salvage and Saoirse? If so, then maybe I could keep buying these. If not, if he's just going to start, I mean, I swear to God, if he tries to start a third unrelated story in here instead of keeping the, at least one of these two already existing stories goes, I may not even buy Rippazine number 3. Because why? Why would you, if all he's going to do is just give you these 16-page stories that stop, flat ass stop midway through, and that's all you get? And then what is he waiting for? Enough letters to be written to him, or enough emails, enough DMs on Twitter saying, "Oh yeah, I would totally buy a comic book with this character." Which, can he really even believe that at this stage? I mean, do you really think he's going to get like 300,000 for Salvage or 300,000 for Saoirse? I don't see it. Galaxy Stranger says, Eric July, world builder, dream weaver, businessman. Big Robot News Today says to Galaxy Stranger, your name reminds me of the Galaxy Rangers in the 80s cartoon. Galaxy Stranger says in that it's an episode of that show. I am a huge fan of that show. Oh, interesting. Haven't heard of that one before. Yeah, I don't. What is the reason to keep buying this crap? I mean, there's, aside from the previews, and don't you get enough in previews off of the Rippaverse's own site? I mean, yeah, you get lettered previews in these books, but it doesn't do you much good. I just don't. I don't know. I'm not seeing the value in the Rippazine that I was hoping to see. I thought there'd be a lot more interviews, and in here there's only one. I mean, they had so many interviews. It was like, why didn't you just balance these two issues out more so that you had, like maybe 2 or 3 interviews in each one? It seemed like they tried to front load the Rippaverse, and then they couldn't get anybody for the next book, so they got Nerdrotic. I mean, what does he even have to do with this, with the comic book scene? Is he even making a comic of his own? I don't know, because I didn't read the interview, because I don't give a shit. I don't know this guy. Yeah, as far as trying to get me, warmed up for the rest of the Rippaverse stuff that's coming out, it's just not working. Yeah, Super Tizo says they couldn't even do a Rippasend interview with Dillard or Flash. I mean, that's how sad it is. It's just this whole issue is like one big womp womp, and I don't know. God, even some of the artwork and stuff. This is what Gooding's face looks like. Look at Gooding's face for this alternate cover. That's the $7 cover. God, he looks like Foggy Nelson. Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, congratulations on creating a PI character who looks pretty. Now get back to finishing the other story. I mean, I tried to write just a regular chat on his live stream today, where I said, well, are you going to be finishing up the Salvage story or the Saoirse story, because you can't just keep leaving stories unfinished. We've got ISOM, the first arc, that's already unfinished. Now we've got Salvage that's unfinished. You could kind of count Gooding that's unfinished, just because they only did half of Mike Baron's script. I'm swearing to that. And then you've got the Saoirse story that's unfinished. You've got all of these unfinished stories sitting around in the Rippaverse. And it's like, well, when are you going to finish something so that we can have something in our hands to really evaluate and say, this was good, this was bad? Melvin Sherman said, about to say, I like some concept of Gooding, but main problem, I feel Mike Baron just skipped a bit. Well, I don't think that's his fault necessarily. Let's see. Melvin Sherman also says, I don't mind the whole kid versus bully, but like his bully becomes a villain. Oh, and Galaxy Stranger asks, what happened to? Oh, Smashball says Foggy Nelson is right on the money. Galaxy Stranger says, what happened to Salvage PI? Yeah, we don't know. He's confronting that ninja from the first part of his episode, and then all of a sudden, not even a to be continued, which it would be at least nice, It's I mean, maybe he thinks you just don't need it to be continued. You're smart enough for it yourself, but it's almost like the courtesy or reach around. You are already sodomizing me with these $20 comic books for a 16-page story. You may as well give me the reach around but to be continued. Oh man. Smashball says, yeah, unfinished stories and sloppy stories. Unfortunately, I feel like some of the promise of the Rippaverse is all but gone. Oh, I mean, Goodyng just tanked it for me. When I read Goodyng, I was like, I'm actually at the point where I don't want this company to succeed anymore because they have produced such garbage at this point that I don't I I don't want there to be something good in there that's going to lift all the garbage up and get people interested in the garbage. I had hopes for the Rippaverse. I had hopes for its improvement, and now I just hope it's consistent crap, so that people can know don't waste your money on this thing. You're not gonna get your money's worth out of it, guaranteed. I would rather anybody like Chuck Dixon or Joe Bennett, if anybody has ideas like the Horsemen that they want to take, I hope they can just basically take that completely out of the Rippaverse universe, extract that, put it into their own universe, and let fly with that. I mean, put it into the freaking Nolan verse. Do you think Graham Nolan's going to refuse you? Why the hell would you tie the Horsemen to this garbage freaking universe? Tie it to something where at least it has a chance of being something good. At least some people think Joe Frankenstein or Escape from Monster Island. They're not my cup of tea. But still, I would rather see the Horsemen thrive over in the Nolan verse than over in this Rippaverse. Not that I'm thinking it's necessarily going to thrive either. I mean, with the characters that have been introduced so far, with the menagerie of Nazis, or not Nazis, ninjas, with the menagerie of ninjas, and hell, I wonder if that winds up doing something to the I wonder if the mention of that word by itself does something to the monetization. Oh crap. Yeah, I don't. There's nothing in the Rippaverse at this point that makes me want to see it succeed. Which is why, for the most part, I think I'm just not going to buy their stuff anymore. I mean, I'll buy ISOM 3. I have to. It's just I want the end of that story. But everything else coming out of there, if Alpha Core 2 has a good enough premise behind it, maybe I'll get that. But I can't imagine buying Yaira 2. I can't imagine buying Bloodruth #1. I can't imagine buying another Goodyng comic unless it's Mike Barron's. And he's finishing out the script that he started with. I can't, but I don't think he can now, because in this Rippazine, it shows that I have a feeling that in the second part of Goodyng the Polymath, as Mike Barron would have delivered it, that Splatterpuss character would come back and kill his wife. And then Goodyng would realize that, oh my God, I built myself up. I've allowed people to build me up as this infallible inventor. And now I've just discovered how fallible I really am. And instead of, putting myself out there in the huge market and whatnot, I'm just gonna tailor to the needs of the little folk on the outskirts of town, because I feel like that's what I can be competent at. I can't be competent running up against the big dogs and the international agencies and stuff like that. Something that'd be a really earth-shaking blow to his ego. Because he does have that. He is displaying that feeling of, I am able to handle everything myself. And when if he can realize in the worst possible way that he is not all-seeing, all-knowing, all protected from the vicissitudes of life, and when he realizes that, his stoicism has not prepared him for the possibility of, losing the loved one closest to him, then, that would be a great falling apart story and how do I rebuild myself story. If Mike Baron were allowed to tackle that, take that on, I have a feeling that the Rippaverse, looked at that portion of the story and said, "Now we don't want to do that," and so they just scrapped it. And that's why Gooding the Polymath is the complete crap fest that it is because they only took the first part of the story where everything's going great for him and made that into the book. That's not a good book. Oh, what do we got here? Let me catch up. Melvin Sherman says it's like as if in an alternate universe Stan Lee was like, make Flash Thompson the bad guy, talking about the Gooding story. Like I feel like the first issue should be about Gooding in high school and be completely about that. Not a bad idea. Yeah, that's like the issues that should be Kato in high school and he and Ron get in a fight. Ron has his way to bully Kato, and Kato has a way to stop him, and it should end with Ron sent to military school or juvie. That's an interesting idea. I mean, to have the first issue of Gooding the Polymath just basically be about his high school days, but I don't think is that really something that a lot of people would want to buy. If it was just a thing about his high school days. I'm not sure that it is. I think that's more of a Gooding Zero kind of comic. Back in the day when you used to have Defiant or Valiant, who had 0 issues. Remember those? I mean, even the DC universe got into it for a while when they did 0 Hour, and then they did all those 0 issues that were fleshing out the origins of the characters. And they did it again in New 52. They had 0 issues, and I actually had the omnibus of all of those 0 issues. I think I got rid of it because New 52. And that sounds definitely like a Gooding 0. It would have been more interesting to see Gooding the Polymath be a comic book about Gooding versus the Splatterpuss character, Gooding realizing that this is the same guy who used to beat him up in high school. And also, it would to have a 0 issue that made it clear that they went to some sort of special school, because Gooding's genius, I don't think, really would have been best cultivated in a normal school. So it could have been that they're both geniuses, that they're both genius level people, but because of because of whatever happened between him and Gooding in school, the Ron guy, the Splatterpuss character, had to get channeled into the military instead, where his brains were not going to be appreciated. So that might be a way to do it, and then you could just have a 0 issue that goes back and focuses on the high school years, but between Gooding and Ron. That, I think, would have been the way to do that. Let's see. I don't get why Horseman wasn't a Rippasend book. Yeah, that would have definitely kept the universes separate. Eric says he doesn't publish other people's ideas, but then went all in on Horsey. Yeah, I almost feel like they had him over a barrel and just basically said, look, we want to have this Horseman character. We're not really that interested in Alpha Corps, but you let us do this Horseman thing, and then we'll do another issue of Alpha Corps. Let's see what else. But Golden Fail isn't a Rippaverse book, the Golden Patriot one. That'll be interesting to see that. I don't know anything about Dillard's artwork. I'm probably going to get a copy of that to see whether that's any good. Hervoy, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right at all. Hervoy Grahovac says hello. Melvin Sherman says, and also, I want to know about J. aka Drunk 3PO's book. Yeah, that's the Achromatic Chronicles stuff. And I saw a few pages of that. I just was not interested in the slightest. Super Tizo, Gooding has no challenges, so he doesn't fail because he's good. Yeah, there's nothing interesting about that. Anthony Parker says, like, you would bring any honesty, LOL. I don't know what that's about. Melvin Sherman, and his book is Achromatic Chronicles Green. Achromatic Chronicles Blue was published before Rippasend, but I want you to do that book too. And I know, no, I'm not subjecting myself to that. Sorry, I am just no. I have zero desire to do the Achromatic Chronicles by Drunk 3PO. It's just, that is not even nearly written for me. No, the next comics I need to review, I've got some that I just need to give some people some notes on. They haven't asked for a formal review yet, and they haven't released their books to the point where I could do just an independent review. I need to do Liam Gray's Dino King #1. If he comes out with a second printing of his, I think it was Xenotype or Xenotypes, then I'll do one of those as well, since they're set in the same universe. What else? I have got 2 John Malin projects on the way. Graveyard Shift ought to be coming by the end of this year, and then I guess it's end of next year that I'll get my copies of Godlike 1 and 2 with the supplementals. Shane Davis's Starlight Cats. I'm waiting to get another copy of Starlight Cats before I do that one, because I need to cannibalize one for scans. What else? One of these days I'll get around to doing Rini Strachowski's Fiendish, and I'm kind of interested in maybe doing one or two by Narwhal, Per Berg. He's got one that I think is called Cerberus or something like that, but I have yet to really delve into his catalog any. Let's see. Oh, Anthony Parker. Apparently, Anthony Parker's got a beef with Tizo Spencer, the man who paid for the success he found. That's utter BS. I don't know. Yeah, he's got a beef with him. My boy Graphic says, Mighty Golden Patriarch Super Gay Tie book. Super Tizo says, but Drunk 3PO won't make it Achromatic Chronicles Black. Well, it's not. I mean, it's a color, but yeah, that part's already in the black, white, and gray. Smashball, will you review the animated episodes of Horseman when it comes out like you did the trailer? I have a feeling that if he actually releases those, do you think that he'd actually release them to the general public, or do you think that he would release them to just his membership? If he's going to do it to just his membership, I'm not a member, so I won't ever see them. If he does release them to the general public, I can watch them, but I mean, it'll be painful probably. Let's see. Speaking of Stan Lee, what was your least favorite Stan Lee run book? That's a good question. That's a good question. The one Stan Lee character that I have tried over and over and over again to really get interested in, and I just can't do it, is Daredevil. And I think the large reason for that is I actually have... Is it Daredevil, though? I mean, could it be Thor instead? I'm trying to think of how I've gotten... Of course, you could always look at his later comics, like, Ravage 2099, but I don't think we're really talking about those. Daredevil is a hard comic to get into because it's so much on the grim and gritty side. Even though he's got superpowers, more often than not, he's just fighting against the Kingpin and whatever, superpowered minions there are. And so it's kind of an organized crime fighting book, kind of like the Punisher is. And so the Punisher is not one that I've really gravitated to either over time. Thor, I always had a hard time with because anything that involves magic, and although I love the early Doctor Strange stuff, but anything that involves like these gods and magic and how they're able to do all these special things, there's a lot of crazy rule breaking that goes on that makes it hard to swallow a lot of what is going on in the books. They can do practically anything they set their minds to, and if you need to invent some sort of power that they have to save the day, then you can do that. But with Daredevil, I think the problem was largely the fact that Daredevil is such a maudlin character. He always seems guilty. I mean, he isn't always written that way. I think Mark Waid had probably the most positive arc on Daredevil you've probably ever seen, I would guess. Because I didn't really read that arc. But he's always depressed. He's always losing something. He's always fighting an uphill battle and never winning. All of his enemies come back. He never has any special victories. He never has any. He gets all these girls, but he's never lucky at love. So he's just like having a series of relationships. It's very, very hard to relate to a character that has that much negativity going on. And then on top of that, the character's blind. And so how well do you relate to that? It's not impossible to relate to a blind character, but at the same time, even if you had the opportunity, just the fact that you're a comic reader would mean you don't really want to be Daredevil in real life. And I think one of the things that gets in the way of identification of that with that character is knowing that you'd lose access to the thing that you enjoy most. I mean, if you enjoy comic books, you're not lining up to be blinded. So to try and put yourself in the position of a blind man in the comic is like, okay, I can do this temporarily, but I can't do this long term. So when I picked up the Daredevil Epic collections, I only got the first 3. And it was within the first 3 that I think Karen learned that he was Daredevil. And, then they split. And I think it was after that he took up with the Black Widow. And by then, the art style at Marvel Comics had changed to the point where I didn't feel like the art and the writing on Daredevil were syncing up the way that appealed to me. And so I just basically decided, I'm done at this point. So I probably won't get any more Daredevil Epic collections and other collections of Daredevil beyond what I've got. I've got a few of the Brian Michael Bendis volumes. I've got, of course, I've got the Born Again and Fall of the Kingpin. I think I've still got that. But Daredevil, yeah, that's a hard one. Let's see here. Super Tizo says, you're going to cannibalize Starlight Cats? They're eating the cats. They're eating the cats. Yeah, a digital copy in addition to someone's regular copy, because from the digital copy, I can much more easily create, well, it's not scans in that case. I mean, you're just basically taking from the files and laying down the images in the PowerPoint presentation, and then I can, jot over them as I want. As opposed to having to actually tear a comic book apart and then put the pages on my scanner, scan them in, and then do what I need to with them. That takes a long time. It's not a fun process. Oh, let's see. I need to read the Miller run. Yeah, I have. I think I have 2 volumes of Frank Miller's run, and third volume I thought was garbage. So, but I also have his origin story. I think I have his origin story for. I might have gotten rid of that. I don't know. I don't know if I got rid of that or not. Frank Miller's Daredevil, I know I have the first 2 volumes. There were 3 volumes of it, and the third volume I just didn't think was worth it. The third volume was largely him crying up a river over Elektra dying, and then that was it. Realizing, that she's indeed dead, and then, of course, later she's not. See, yeah, it all depends on who's writing. Well, yeah, that's true largely of any character. It depends on who's writing the character. I mean, when Jeff Johns was writing Superman, there was some good stuff going on in Superman. When James Robinson was writing Superman, there was some good stuff going on in Superman. And then there were other writers where John Byrne I liked, but there were other writers whose work I just didn't care for and didn't pick up. But yeah, the writing is important. It is important who it is, who gets on a book. Waid sucks. He co-wrote one good book, and then I think Ross did all the work in Kingdom Come. Mark Waid is actually one of the best writers out there, period, bar none. I mean, he's one of the absolute 100% best done in one writers, and that is a rarity. Him and Christos Gage, I think, probably share the honor of being a couple of the best done-in-one storytellers, because most of the time these days, I'm not saying everything that Mark Waid has ever done. I didn't like his work on Hulk, for example. But he tells very emotional stories. And especially if he can get a done-in-one kind of book, like when he was on Crux for CrossGen, every one of those freaking books was like a punch in the gut. And those are the kinds of books that I like. That's one of the reasons why I kind of like Ethan Van Sciver's writing, is that he will give you those moments where he will take your emotions and just go, ugh. And that is the kind of thing you really want to get from a comic book. Now, when Waid is partnered with a whole bunch of other writers, like if he's having to do like an Avengers crossover or something like that, then his stuff can get watered down. But I have a lot of regard for Mark Waid just on the fact that he's able to do a good done-in-one story, and that's something that a lot of writers fall down on the job in. They don't know how to make something, how to make either a tearjerker or one of those that just fills you with joy, or somebody who can play to your emotions really well, and Mark Waid can do that. Like I said, it doesn't mean I like everything that he's done, but there are a lot of things that he really justly deserves credit for. We got Daredevil. Okay, Herboy Grahabeck says Daredevil has heightened senses, not superpowers. Heightened senses are superpowers. You clearly need to read more Daredevil. I don't know who you're talking to though there. I do think his radar seeing, or Big Robot News Today says, I do think Daredevil's radar seeing power is cool, and how he can weigh even playing cards and tell what card it is. Yeah, those kinds of things. I'll root for Daredevil, but you're right. As a kid, I never wanted to be him. Smashball asks, what's your favorite Stan Lee run book? Well, I actually got the chance to tell Stan Lee to his face that he was the best writer that Spider-Man ever had. So when he was on Spider-Man, I think he I think on Spider-Man, he had a better grasp of the character than really anybody who's ever come afterwards, and that includes Dan Slott, who's been very good on the title in terms of getting in terms of understanding the character. But yeah, I think Stan Lee probably did Spider-Man better than anybody. And I wouldn't say that about really any other character that Stan Lee did. I don't think he was the best on Fantastic Four. I think John Byrne did the best on Fantastic Four. When it comes to the Hulk, you know what's really interesting is that I think the TV show had a lot to do with the comic book success during the years that the TV show was on the air, because the Hulk was really all over the place for the longest time. And you never had a clear set of rules for when the Hulk would change or change back from Bruce Banner to the Hulk or vice versa. In fact, we're all mostly familiar with the idea of when when Bruce Banner gets mad, he becomes the Hulk. When the Hulk calms down, he becomes Bruce Banner. That actually was not true in the beginning. In the beginning, of course, it was more of a day-night thing. When the sun would go down, he'd become the Hulk, and then when the sun rose, he'd become Bruce Banner again. But that changed almost immediately, and then it came to his subjecting himself to a gamma ray change, or to gamma rays again, to change back and forth from the Hulk to Bruce Banner. And then after that, he wound up losing control of the process, and it became so that when Bruce Banner got mad, he became the Hulk, and when the Hulk got super mad, he'd revert to Bruce Banner. So it was like different on both sides. I got justly lambasted by Greg Pak one time at a panel where I said, well, this isn't really like, the Bruce Banner and the Hulk that you're showing us aren't really the Bruce Banner of the old Stan Lee days. He's like, yeah, but Stan Lee was all over the place with the Hulk, and having gone back and read the old stuff, that's totally true. So as far as like the best writer as far as the Hulk stories goes, oh gosh, who would I put on that? I'm not even sure I would know the names of the people who all wrote on that, because there were so many. And of course, everybody probably thinks Peter David, but I go back and I look at the Peter David stuff, and I think there's a lot of corniness in there that I probably appreciated more as a kid than I do as an adult. When you see kind of the insert of Wile E. Coyote getting crushed by falling material, that's kind of like, all right, that's cute, but it's not the be all and end all. I don't actually know who I'd put on the Hulk. But as far as Stan Lee's best one, I would say that he was the best writer that Spider-Man ever had. Are you even a real comic fan, or do you just steal from the net to read them? Hey, look, if you want to see the absolute freaking mess that my room is, I'm pretty sure that I have shown at one point or another how many comic books I have. I actually have, so I've got, if you walk into my junk room, which is where I store the majority of my comics, you will turn to the left and you will see 3 boxes deep, 3 boxes wide, 2 levels. So that's at least 18 long boxes of comics. And then in my bedroom, where I keep the more current stuff, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, probably 8, 10 boxes, 10 long boxes of comics in there. And a lot of them are like collected volumes. They're more of the Epic collection type stuff. I try and get that just because they're cheaper. Yeah, as far as reading stuff online, I mean, I have read stuff online. Sometimes I've taken some of my scans from there because it doesn't pay to like dig through and find my Batman number 417 if I can just go online and get a clearer image of Batman 417. Yeah, but I've put a ton of money into comics, and now I'm just trying to get back what I can. I'm still like for right now. I'm trying to get what is it, Dan DiDio's Ancient Enemies collection. I need to pick that up. Let's see. Super Tizo, that's one of the main reasons why I don't review much, because I want digital scans instead of using my phone and app on it. Yeah. And CG seems to be just really against waking up to the future. Yeah, I would like to see digital copies of those. I mean, there's definitely a market for that you could have for that, but and especially since you will see bootleg copies of some of the Comicsgate stuff. I think Cyberfrog Blood Honey finally got bootlegged. But sometimes you wind up with earlier versions of the comics getting bootlegged. It's not the most recent ones. Yeah, I like online. I don't like reading online comics very much. I prefer to have them actually in hand when I'm reading them, because I know sometimes there was one time. In fact, I was reviewing Cargo. Go ahead and you can look back at my latest review for Cargo by Andrew M. Rodriguez. And at one point, I almost made the mistake of reviewing the bottom of one page and the top of one page, because I had him send me the PDF. I asked him to send me the PDF so that I could review from that and make my scans from that. And I almost made the mistake of thinking that the bottom of one page and the top of another page were connected. And when that was the case, there was a way that the images kind of seemed to run into each other that made it unappealing. And I had to remind myself, wait a minute, we've changed pages here. So I'm going to see this page is going to be down here and the other page is going to be up here, and you're not going to have that blending in. So that's happened on occasion. So that's one of the reasons why I prefer to have a book in hand when I'm actually reading the book. But if the only way to get at a book is online, like for example, this is what actually taught me that some comics are available online. And it was when Valiant basically kicked their entire customer base in the nuts and published a comic called Legends of the Geomancer. And Legends of the Geomancer was a story that was going all the way back to the beginning of Valiant mythology. And this is something in the current Valiant universe, the current third iteration of Valiant Comics. This comic was only available to retailers who bought like a certain number of copies of Valiant Comics. And it was available in such limited quantities that just to buy one of them, you had to pay like $40 to the retailer. And what Valiant promised was, and so far they've kept this promise, I really wish they'd break it. They promised that they would never reprint Legends of the Geomancer in any form, not even a trade paperback form. And I'm like, are you serious? Are you seriously kicking your customer base in the nuts like that? And so eventually I realized that there were people who had made scans and made bootleg copies out there. And that was how I found out about the whole universe worth of comics that's available online if you're just bootlegging stuff. And I was like, oh my God. But when it comes to the stuff that I'm reviewing, by and large, yeah, I have either bought that at one time in my past, or I actually have it still to this day. Especially the stuff that isn't available in that form. And the Rippaverse. And I always buy the Rippaverse stuff before I comment on it, because Eric July has basically said, if you're not my customer, I don't care what you think. It's like, okay, well, then I have to buy your stuff. So I've always bought the Rippaverse comics and then cannibalized those. Let's see. But yeah, that Legends of the Geomancer thing. Dear God. And that was where you had the first chronological appearance of the Eternal Warrior, of Armstrong, of Ivar the Time Walker as they were kids. You had the origin of the feud between the Earth and Master Dark and those kinds of or I don't know if it was Master Dark, but whatever entity it was that was causing the Geomancers to die year after year. So it's kind of an essential tale of the Valiant universe. Why you would ever lock that off and lock it away from people? That's just miserable of Valiant Comics to have done that. And I hope somebody purchases the company someday and it trades hands and they say, okay, we're going to go ahead and reprint this and screw the trade value on our screw the what do you call it, resale value on everything else. Oh, let's see. Okay. Yeah, let's see. Anthony Parker says, okay, hold on a second. Where are we? Anthony Parker says, Comics Gate ain't crap. Tizo, keep dreaming. Name one book? Anthony Parker, I can't disagree more. No, EVS is not a good writer either. Okay, I'm out. You lost me at EVS and Dan Slott being good writers. Okay, feel free to leave. You're not important here. Thank you. Smashball. EVS is just okay as a writer, not great. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put him up in the luminaries. What I would put him up in is in the writers who are competent enough to be able to get at your emotions at times. And not there's some writers who never do that. There are writers who never get to that level. If you can actually get to the point where you have, taken a reader's emotions and been able to, I mean, like, for example, I mean, Jeff Johns is I really feel like Ethan Van Sciver learned at the feet of Jeff Johns, because Jeff Johns does the same thing. He will give you, at least over the course of a series, he will give you a moment. He will give you an emotional moment that is like, oh my God, that made the book worth it. Like, for example, if you ever read Three Jokers, the first issue of Three Jokers is largely just standard Batman fare. There's not a lot to really connect it to. I mean, it's a tale. The whole book is a tale about trauma and the effect that trauma has on people, and how some people have recovered from it. Some people really haven't. Some people are still bearing the scars of their traumas to this day. But there's this really great scene where the Joker, or one of the three Jokers, is teasing Jason Todd about what Jason Todd said to him when he was basically begging for his life and getting beaten to death with a crowbar. And at one point, Jason Todd said to the Joker, I'll do anything you want. I'll be your Robin. And it was like, oh my God. That one moment in there where I was like, okay, money well spent, because that's essentially what happened. When Jason became the Red Hood, the Red Hood is essentially the Joker's Robin. And now he's a pain in the ass to Batman, the same way that the Joker has always been a pain in the ass to Batman. So, oh my God, just that one moment in there. And that's really all you need. I mean, that if you can land one moment like that in your comic, you will keep people coming back for more. That is what I feel about comics, and that is what you have to try to do in each of your issues. You have to at least hook in to the reader's emotions one time, and give that yank that says, "Come back. You want more of this." Because what people really want in good movies and good entertainment is to go on an emotional ride. If you can take them along on that emotional ride, then you will keep them coming back. And for me in Wrecked Planet, there was that one. Here's a good example. In Cyberfrog Blood Honey. Cyberfrog Blood Honey. You wouldn't think that this is a moment worth remembering, but it really is. There's a moment where Salamandroid is introducing himself to Chelsin, and he asks, "Are you my mother?" And she says, "Yes." And he says, "I love you." And she says, "Salamandroid, there is you and there is my heart, and I do not know the difference between them." Something like that. And it's such a beautiful moment of pure mother to child, child to mother love. That it's like you see the fact that he's able to give you that. And you wonder, what more can I get? And it turns out in Wrecked Planet, you can get a moment of horror, which is what I felt was the big draw there. There's a particular scene in Wrecked Planet where Cyberfrog's like, he's freaking out because he's thinking the Vespas are on their way and he can't see them. He says, "I need to get above the trees." He hops up and there's a full-on splash page where all of a sudden he is surrounded by the Vespas and one of them looks at them and says, "Murderer." And you're like, oh, crap. And it's that moment there that it's like, okay, I will come back for the next issue. And if you can do that time after time after time, then you will have a fan base. That's what it takes. Being able to take the reader's emotions at some point and really grabbing them to the point where they're like, okay, I'll come back next time. So let's see. Smashball, I agree. Stan Lee's run on Spider-Man is such an easy read. Probably my favorite written Spider-Man as well. Yeah. Super Tito says, EVS is good as a writer. People want to compare his writer to comic greats, and it's just pure stupidity to do so. Yeah, I mean, especially when the point is to keep people coming back for more. Can you do that? I mean, there have been times when I've tried to read Grant Morrison's stuff, and Grant Morrison, he's written some really great stuff. But there's times when I read his stuff and I'm just like, I have no freaking clue what I'm reading. What the hell even is this? You should invest in a book scanner. I'm probably doing that later this year. I'm not sure what good that'd do, especially if it's like for a hardback book. You'd have to tell me what it is you're talking about there. Melvin Sherman says, have planned to do Razorfist books. That is one that I am actually interested in. The Ghosts of the Badlands book that Razorfist did. I'm curious to see that one. Dr. Alpha Miracle Child by Literature Devil and his ISOM review too. I'm not sure about the Dr. Alpha one. I don't think I've heard of that one before. Kyle Klucken says, I personally hate digital comics. Such a nuisance. The only time I read anything digital is if I don't know if I'm ever going to like it, or if I'm going to like it, since I hate wasting money even more than I hate digital comics. Yeah, the one digital comic that I had to get was Adam Legend of the Black Marvel, and I'm sorry, Adam Legend of the Blue Marvel, where basic secret is that he's black. Yeah, I had to get that one because there's just no way to find a copy that's less than $100 out there, and I'm so stupid that there was one point at which I had the opportunity to get a copy of the Adam Legend of the Blue Marvel trade paperback for $10. It was on a reduced price. I can still see that neon green of the sticker in front of me saying only $10. And oh my gosh, I passed it by. I should not have passed it by. But at that point, he was not a well-used character. It wasn't until Al Ewing would be using him in the Ultimates, in his Ultimates, that all of a sudden I really wanted to know what was the backstory of this character. So at that point, the book was out of print. You couldn't find a copy. Everything gets slabbed and all this other garbage. So I don't know. I mean, if I go to a comic book convention someday and find it up on a wall for like $75 or something, I'll probably just buy it right off of that. But other than that, I did. They actually were giving away copies during Black History Month of that digital comic. I think I paid $5 for mine, so it's not like I had to pay a bunch, but I definitely would get a print version of that. It's really the only thing that my comic book collection is missing right now is to have that particular book. Let's see. Super Tizo says, I'm a digital comic reader. I only get physical because I have no choice. I prefer digital. Most comic books I won't be interested in because they lack a digital option. Student OG says, what comics have you read that were released this year? I mean, most of that is going to be, what comics have I read that were released this year? Mostly that's going to be the reprints. I mean, the thing is like, as far as stuff that I'm buying, I'm only buying like reprints of early Marvel stuff. And then I was actually thinking I would buy the DC All In #1 issue that sets up the Absolute Universe, because they say it's a flip book that's done in such a way that you really have to have the paper copy in hand to understand it. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll go ahead and I'll pick up that issue. Besides that, I'm probably going to get a copy of the hardcover Joker of the World, because it has a sequel story to 3 Jokers. As far as any other Marvel stuff, I'm staying pretty much the hell away from Marvel, and mostly the hell away from DC. Although I will be getting the first trade paperback of the current run of The Flash, because Simon Spurrier's work looks interesting to me on that. So I will pick that up. I always had way more of an affinity for the Wally West Flash than I did the Barry Allen Flash, and so now that he's taking on Wally West, that I'll probably be getting that, at least in trade paperback form. But as far as other DC stuff goes, I don't know. Everything else is on the independent scene, and it's just, for the most part, I'm reading it for the sake of having something to review, because really the people who I want to see succeed more are the people who are on the independent scene. And when they've got something that's good and I can help make it better, then I would really rather read those than spend my money on the DC and Marvel stuff where nobody's going to be listening to me. Kyle Clucken says, I'm polar opposite. I want a comic in my hand. There's something about turning the page physically that makes the whole reading experience better. Cowboy Bebop says, what's your opinion on people saying that Cyberfrog is EVS's self-insert? To some degree it is. And he makes no bones about that. He talks about how the Vespas are really, the social justice warriors who canceled him. And he talks about how Cyberfrog is really a product of the kind of 90s fun comics, the early Image stuff, those kinds of things that would not catch on today on account of how they're viewed. It's like people will go back to those old 90s things and they'll look and they'll say, well, this is just so misogynist, this is so sexist and blah blah blah, and the SJWs would have a field day with those. So it also talks about his the way they just rip Cyberfrog to shreds toward the end of Wrecked Planet is kind of a metaphor for his own cancellation. And I think that seeing Andrea as kind of Heather Swain and himself as Cyberfrog, and I'm sure it's not as one-to-one as that, but there are ways in which he has deliberately developed parallels in how Cyberfrog meshes with his own life. And so what I guess we're going to see in Cyberfrog 3 and 4, which are the final portions of this arc, are going to be kind of maybe the birth of Comicsgate as a metaphor. So we'll see. Let's see. Super Tizo asks, Mike, are you reviewing Metro Boomin? Never heard of it. Super Tizo says, I love you. Cool story about dumping lizard. Yeah, and that's another book that I will be getting is Rainbow the Brute with Cool Story Bro, because I do want to read those. Smashball says, great points about EVS. Not many writers possess that ability. Cowboy Bebop says, in my opinion, the Vispas and Cyberfrog should have stayed voiceless instead of being understood because they're more intimidating as a silent hive mind. Yeah. I think when if you want to, if what your goal is to demonstrate this hive mind as being the hive mind who have attacked you personally, then you're going to need to show what is horrible about that hive mind. It can't just be, it's kind of like what Eric July tried to do in ISOM number 2, where Shadron was he didn't even speak English. And it's like, well, okay, now you've made Shadron unrelatable to that degree, because now we can't understand whether he's evil or whether he just has an idea of right and wrong that is so alien from ours that, he goes around hunting and killing these kids. So in order to make evil relatable, you have to have a point of connection. And when there's no language that you can even share between the good and evil sides, you don't get that connection. You don't get to see how they relate to each other. It's kind of like Thanos in the MCU movies. One of the reasons why he was such a good villain is that you could at least relate to his point of view, even if you didn't agree with it. You understood where he was coming from. You can't really understand the Vispas unless you give them some sort of language that we can all tap into. Big Robot News today says, I like reading comics in the CBR or CBZ format with the reader called CD is Play. I haven't. I think I had a CBR or CBZ reader once upon a time. I'm fine with just PDFs. Super Tizo. Oh, I have to get it physical because of a gimmick. You're talking about the DC All-In number 1? Possibly. I would probably, if you're at all interested in the absolute lineup or any of the DC All-In stuff that's going to come out afterwards. I'm not really interested in all that. I'm just kind of curious to see what it is that they did, because it's supposed to be like a flip book of sorts, and I'm just curious to see what it is that they did on the flip in the flip book way that is supposed to be so unique or so innovative. I really have no idea what it is that I'd be looking for. And I do know that if they do, if they do flip book like in the way they did, what was it, Magnus Robot Fighter back in the day, where you actually had to turn the book over and read half of it, or there were actually books like what was it, Jeff Lemire's Trillium, where you had to turn the book over and read backwards the way you came. That's harder to do when you're on a digital when you're trying to do a digital copy. Let's see. Becky Xavier says, yeah, EVS might be bad to some people, especially specifically Thomas Royal, but Eric is just terrible. Yeah, it's been a while since I tried to comment at all on Eric July's writing. I mean, with Saoirse, I mean, nothing new has been invented here. And the most you're getting out of Saoirse is eye candy. You're not getting any there's definitely no emotional yank. There's definitely there's not there. I kept reading the story saying, why even write this? You know, I mean, what's the point of writing this character, of creating this character? I mean, are you just basically trying to, you know, honeypot guys and say, you know, here, look, you know, Ginger Babe. I don't understand that. It's like, if guys, if you want redhead porn, there's a lot of free redhead porn out there. you do not have to settle for paying $7 for what is ultimately not going to show you any TNA. Yeah, I going through that whole story was just like, what? And when it comes, I mean, ISOM, I still liked as a story. I thought it had a lot of the ingredients of a good story in there. It was just that the technical flaws of the book outweighed all of the outweighed the story to the point where you couldn't really enjoy the story. And then ISOM number 2, I felt like ISOM number 2, I'm still wondering if maybe he switched ISOM number 2 and ISOM number 3 around so that he could introduce more characters in ISOM number 2 that he was hoping to spawn off more books from. That's the only thing that I could that I would. That's the only kind of saving grace I would give him on that, is maybe if he just kept ISOM ill-advised to be a 2-parter and resolved all the Darren stuff, and then went into the, well, where is Sam? What the hell are these, you know, fire monkey creatures, and what's going on with this, and introduce Goodyng and Bloodruth from there. Maybe that would have been a more coherent structure. I just don't know. I don't know. And maybe even the leaving the Shadron stuff for issue number 3 possibly could have been a better idea. I don't know. I saw number 2 was just all freaking over the place, and still have a bad taste in my mouth. Do I also read Japanese manga? Asked Cowboy Bebop on occasion. Yeah. Attack on Titan was probably the last one that I read, and but I also mainly recommend the series to everyone. And you know what's funny about that is that Attack on Titan, the anime almost perfectly captures everything in the manga, so that were it not for 2 scenes, I would say you never even have to pick up the manga. And the problem is, those 2 scenes, they do help a little. They do help as to, you know, why is it that the timing of the attack, the initial attack that opens the story, why did that happen when it happened? That was one thing. And the other thing was, at the very, very end, when they're running through the end credits of Attack on Titan, the very final episode, and they're showing scenes in small vignettes in the, like, the top and the bottom corners. It's like, you really need to be able to see those scenes at full size. So if you've got like a 60-inch TV or something, then you might be able to see what's going on in those particular scenes and get the full impact of that. Otherwise, you have to go back to the manga. But except for those particular 2 scenes, you don't even need the manga at that point. And yeah, that's how well adapted that series was. Although I did notice a couple of a couple of bad translations. If you go back and you look at my YouTube shorts and look for Attack on Titan, you'll see I found a couple of badly translated sections in there. Oh, okay, what do we got? Super Tizo, I really don't care for the absolute stuff, just curious. Batman, I still think looks goofy. Wonder Woman probably has the best look. Superman looks completely dumb. Yeah, I just don't know what the point of this is. It's almost like they're doing their own ultimate universe, but I mean, just reboot the universe you got. It's not like we care about any of the stories that are actually happening now. Cowboy Bebop says, I think the reason that Eric July created the red character was to appeal to the vocal minority of people who complain about Hollywood race-bending gingers. Yeah, speaking of Wally West. Backy Executive says, Absolute Batman is ripped as hell. I don't know about Superman, but Wonder Woman, I say, is probably mid. Super Tizo says, I think some of the concepts in Absolute Batman are cool. It's totally DC actually doing an ultimate universe where things are different. I just don't get why he's a beefcake. Wonder Woman seems to be the most interesting from hell on the Amazon. Magical big sword that can shrink. Superman seems lame, emo with no parents. And dude 357 says, Rippazine. Yeah, that's pretty much what I've been saying. Okay, what have we done? We've done about an hour and 36 minutes here, so let me go ahead and let you all go. I need to get going with looking at some people's stuff that they've sent me and try and get through some reviews of that. Thanks for sticking around for the long haul. Yeah, I really didn't want to do this just as a video because there would have been like nothing to show you. There's no there here. I if it keeps up like this, I'm probably not gonna even buy any of the future Rippazine stuff and probably be looking at it. Way things are going, I'm going to be looking for a way to offload whatever Rippaverse crap I actually have, with the exception of the shirts and hat and whatnot. Kyle Clucken says they're doing Absolute Universe to get new versions of the characters because by 2035, the big four, Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, Wonder Woman, will be public domain and won't be captive to their company. But why do them like that, though? I mean, it's like, you're going to, do people really want a new version of all these characters? I mean, it's almost like the Absolute versions would be the public domain versions of those characters, pretty much. Well, no, I guess not. I guess the absolute versions of the characters, those are new takes on the characters, whereas it is the old takes on the characters that would have to be in the would be in the public domain. All right, just get the Rippaverse for free for me. Oh, Super Teaser, somehow you got a glitch $20 membership. All right, I'm gonna go head out. Thanks everyone for hanging out, and I don't know what I will be streaming on next. It depends on, I guess, what comes in the mail or what other subject hits my fancy. I know one thing that I've been accused of lately, especially regarding the Horseman animated trailer, is double standard regarding my, well, you don't say this kind of stuff about Batman or Daredevil, when I'm talking about how the Horseman, can land on his legs after jumping through a warehouse ceiling glass, and 4 tons of force later, he's supposed to be standing upright and not injured at all. I'm like, is this guy superhuman or not? And a lot of people got on my case saying, well, you never say anything about, Batman or any of these other characters. So I thought I might actually show in a video some examples. It just depends on whether I haven't got anything better to do at the time. Because I know there are some things that I've always been like, oh, this cannot happen. I cannot believe you even tried to push this past me. Whether it's Stan Lee's Hulk or Avengers, or Batman stuff. I mean, there's only so much stuff I can swallow off of those as well. So, how will I ever review the Lara Sue Chronicles? Never heard of them. Exactly. Batman has a cape to break his fall. Super Tizo says, Some things are meant to be not mentioned, and Lara Sue is one of them. Oh God, now I'm gonna have to look up what this Lara Sue Chronicles thing is. Okay, I will look this up just on a lark. KenPenders.com, Lara Sue Chronicles. What the furry is this? It's like, what? Oh my God, it's almost like tried to blend what was it? It's almost like you tried to blend. What was that? What was that cartoon from the G-Force cartoon from all the way from back in the day? Ah, crap. Let's see, G-Force. Where's cartoon? Oh, now we're getting like way deep into the weeds here. G-Force cartoon. What was that called? Oh, come on. What did you call it? Battle of the Planets. Yeah, it almost looks like a cross between Battle of the Planets and furries. Oh my God. Wow. Okay. Yeah. No, I think I can thumbs down my reviewing that one. Yeah. Woo. All right. Okay. Thanks everyone for hanging out. I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. Probably get something to eat, and I will talk to y'all later.